What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over Identity Crisis, but not really. You see, let me explain. When it came to the actual event, it did change a lot of things in DC Comics. So, for example, the whole idea of the death of Jack Drake. As we all know, Jack Drake was the father to Tim Drake. And that was a big moment in the world of Batman comics as well. But there were a few other things that happened in this event that did change DC Comics forever. Like, for example, the whole idea of Firestorm. You see, when it came to the original Firestorm, better known as Ronnie Raymond, he had actually died in the 5th chapter of this event. And so with his death, it kind of left room open for somebody else to be able to take up the mantle where he left off at. And so around the same time we had this event, DC gave us a brand new Firestorm comic to introduce a brand new Firestorm. And so that is why I say it is technically a tie-in, because this book came out around the same time the last Firestorm had basically died in Identity Crisis. Now, we're only covering the first 3 chapters of this series, but it's going to give us a good idea of the actual origin of this character. Now, we actually pick up with a character known as Jason Rush. Now, Jason Rush is actually going to be our new Firestorm in this DC universe around this time. Now, when it comes to Jason, we currently see him at his job right now at this family restaurant. Now, we learn very quickly that he got in some kind of fight. And the reason why? Because his face is swollen. Now, with his face being swollen, unfortunately, he can't work because, again, this is a family restaurant and he is a waiter. And apparently, because how bad it is, he cannot be on the floor taking orders. And so, unfortunately, he gets sent home for the day. Now, on his way home from work, that is when we learn a tad bit more about the actual character. We do learn that right now, he was trying his best to work there because he needed the money. And the reason why? Because he's trying to get into a school of his liking. But the problem is he has to pay his own way into school. It does seem like that currently he has no support from his actual parents. Now, we're going to learn why here in a moment, but once he's able to get home, we are then introduced to another character, and that would be Mick Wong. Now, Mick Wong is actually a close friend to Jason. Matter of fact, when it comes to Mick, he was able to already go to the same college that Jason is trying to get into. Now, we see that Mick had called Jason to kind of get a better idea of when is Jason going to be able to actually attend the college that Mick is at. But the problem is for Jason, he has no money. And so you have Jason tell Mick that he has a way to get some more money, but the problem is the way he had chosen could be very dangerous. Let me explain. You see, for Jason, he thinks it'd be a good idea to work for a drug dealer known as Stevie Golick. Now, for Mick, he knows Stevie, and he knows Stevie is a drug dealer, but also Stevie might possibly kill Jason if things go wrong. Now, before the two characters are able to continue their conversation, you did have his father come home. Now, his name is Alvin, but this is where we learn what's really going on at the home for Jason. You see, when it comes to Alvin, he used to work at a factory a while back, except there was an accident. With that accident, unfortunately, Alvin lost his hand. When he lost his hand, he lost his job, but he also lost his wife, the mother of Jason. She walked out on them. And so when that happened, well, unfortunately, Alvin became very abusive towards Jason. And let's not forget that earlier, when it came to the restaurant, the reason why Jason could not work is because his face was swollen, thanks to his father. His father is constantly abusing him. Now, we do see another moment where it does seem like Alvin is going to attack his son, but this time he was able to come down, and you have Jason being able to walk away unharmed. And so later on that night, we then see Jason go meet up with Stevie. Now, for Stevie, as we all know, he is a drug dealer, but he does have a job for Jason. It's all like, hey man, listen, I need you to go ahead and deliver this package. And yes, there's drugs in the package, but hey, it's part of the job. You want the money? You got to take care of this for me. And so we see Jason take the package and begins his way to deliver it over to somebody else. But the problem is, on his way over to the actual location, there was a huge flash of light. And with this flash of light, it knocked out Jason just like that. And so when he wakes up, it has now been hours since he was supposed to deliver the package. And so now he's freaking out and hoping that he is still able to actually deliver the package. Except once he's able to arrive at that location, you have Jason witness a drug deal going wrong because somebody who was actually part of that drug deal feels like that they have been cheated. And so their goal is to now take out the other people who were part of that drug deal. Now you have people trying their best to get away to just survive. And unfortunately, one of those guys, they get shot in the back and they fall to the ground. Now, while they're falling to the ground, they look over at Jason. And that is when you have both of their faces begin to light up out of nowhere. Then out of nowhere, there's a small explosion. But once everything is clear again, you look up and you now have a new firestorm. And apparently Jason's in charge. And really, you know what? I should probably explain this. When it comes to Firestorm, it usually takes two people coming together to create the character. So for example, when it came to the original Firestorm, Ronnie Raymond, his partner was Martin Stein. Now, over the years for Ronnie, he had other partners. But for Jason, it seems like right now his partner is this random guy he just met at this drug deal site. And so as we get into the second issue for today's video, we actually kind of pick up with the idea of Jason freaking out. And the reason why, because now he is getting a crash course of what it's like to be a hero, what it's like to have all these different kinds of powers. And so at first, it's just him just completely freaking out. He's doing all these things at once, but having a hard time learning how to control all these different powers. But once he's able to actually learn how to control all these different powers, he begins to have a whole lot more fun with them. But then out of nowhere, he begins to hear a voice inside his head. And really, this is a perfect time to kind of explain how everything works when it comes to Firestorm. Let me explain, because like I said earlier, when it comes to Firestorm, it took two people coming together into one to create the actual character. And so when it came to the original Firestorm, you had Ronnie Raymond and Martin Stein. Now, when those two characters were able to fuse into one person, they would create Firestorm, but Ronnie would be in charge. And for Martin, he would be inside the head of Ronnie. And so currently, it's the same thing for Jason. Right now, it's his body. He has the ability to be Firestorm. But the other person we saw earlier that was able to fuse with him, that random person that got shot, he is currently inside the head of Jason. And so with him being inside the head of Jason, he's able to see everything that Jason is doing. The whole idea of freaking out because now he has powers, but then quickly learning how to control those powers and how to use those powers. Now for this guy, he loves what he sees for Jason, but at the same time, he wants to get the heck out of the head of Jason. So you have Jason being able to go back down to where he came from, but then as soon as he lands there, that is when you have the two guys go their separate ways. Now, the guy he did fuse with just walks away, and we're kind of left to wonder who that guy was. But then you have Jason realize that he only came here to this place because he was supposed to do a delivery, the envelope for Stevie. Except the problem is, once he's able to find the actual envelope, well, everything inside of it has been burned to crisp. It's just ashes right now. And because again, when he turned the Firestorm, there was a small explosion around him, and the envelope was in that area. Either way, when he calls up Stevie, he tells Stevie like, hey man, listen, so I got some bad news for you. Letting you know right now, those drugs you gave me to deliver, well, yeah, they are completely gone now. They're turned to ash. Now for Stevie, that is a problem because now he lost his drugs and he lost his money he could have got with those drugs. And so he tells Jason like, you know what? I'm very upset with you. And so me and some guys, we're going to pay you a visit later on this week to discuss why it's a bad idea to lose my drugs and also my money. And for Jason, he knows what that means. He knows that sooner or later, they're going to find him. And when they do find him, they're going to kill him. And so when he goes home, he wants to be left alone. And you actually have Mick calling Jason like, hey, man, I want to see if you're okay because you told me that you were going to work for Stevie, the drug dealer. Now, for Jason, he does a stupid thing here. Let me explain. So for Jason, he decides that he should follow Stevie around, which he does. And he follows Stevie all the way over to a drug house. Now, here comes the problem, though. You see, Stevie knew that he was being followed. Stevie knew that he was being followed by Jason. And so once you have Stevie lead Jason all the way over to a drug house and then lose Jason so that he is able to get the jump on Jason, for Stevie is a perfect time because Jason lost his drugs. Jason lost his money. And so Jason must pay for what he did. And so you have Stevie go ahead and stab Jason right in the chest. Except just like earlier, we saw Jason his whole entire face begins to glow, his eyes and mouth. And once again, he turns into Firestorm. Like I said earlier, to turn to Firestorm, you need two people. And so this time, it's Jason and also Stevie. They have now officially combined to create Firestorm once again. Now, with Stevie being inside the head of Jason, that means that Stevie now has complete access to all the things in Jason's mind. So all his memories from his past. And so for Stevie, he wants to know who in the world hit Jason so hard to make his face swole like that? And we already know who it was. It was his father. And so for Stevie, he's now discovering that for Jason, he's being abused by his father. And for Stevie, he loves the idea of teasing Jason about it to the point where you have Jason get so upset that he goes back outside to go confront some of the guys who work for Stevie. And so you have Jason use the powers of Firestorm to take those guys down very easily. But it does seem like he actually killed them off. Now, it does seem like it was a complete accident, but at the same time, it does seem like for Jason, he wanted to do that. Those thugs were coming after him and he had no choice. He had to kill them. Now, here comes the next big problem, though, because when we go back into the mind of Jason and we see Jason and Stevie, well, it seems like Stevie's body is beginning to, well, disappear. And so for Jason, he begins to freak out because now he needs to find a way to make sure they're able to separate before Stevie completely disappears. And so as we dive into the final chapter for today's video, we actually pick up with both Jason and also Stevie just freaking out. And they're trying to find the best way to hopefully separate because right now, when it comes to Stevie's body, it's beginning to disappear. Now, for Stevie, he does not believe that Jason had just gained these powers. He believes that Jason had these powers for a good while, but he didn't realize that Jason is not playing around. That in reality, for Jason, he only had the powers for like a couple of days. Maybe just a day, and that's really it. Either way, for Stevie and also Jason, they kind of believe that because this is not their first time, really Jason's first time being Firestorm, it happened somewhere else. They believe that maybe that location could be the key where it first happened. If they go there, they might actually separate. Unfortunately, when they do go there, they don't separate and they fly away to think of something else. Now, right after they do fly away, we see some kind of camera crew being able to get a photo of Firestorm. That right there could be really important for the later chapters of this series. Now, for Stevie, with the whole idea that now Jason has powers, you have Stevie say, why don't you go see the Justice League? That maybe, just maybe, they are the key who could actually help you get us separated. But the problem is their base right now is in space. And so for Jason, it's kind of like, listen, dude, I don't think I can breathe. But for Stevie, it's all like, you were just walking through walls. You're flying around doing all these different kind of things with these new powers. And you believe in the possibility that you might not be able to breathe out in space. And right now, I'm basically dying. Like, dude, I need you to figure out what to do here right now. Now, you have Stevie bring up the one thing you should not talk about around Jason. And that'll be the whole idea of the fact that Jason is being abused by his father. Let's not forget that Stevie right now has access to Jason's mind. And so with that access, he is able to see that what Jason has gone through his entire life. Now for Stevie, this is fun. But at the same time for Stevie, he's trying to prove a point. He said, listen, your mom left your father right after he had his accident, after he had lost his hand. But on top of that, he became abusive towards her. Now, we can see that right after he became abusive, she left y'all behind. But now all that abuse that he was giving out went towards you, and you stayed for years and years and years. You have been abused by your father. You always been knocked down by your father and other people in your life. And so for Stevie, is more saying, listen, man, for once in your life, take control. You let bullies or thugs or your father always beat you down. It's time for you to finally shine. It's time for you to take control of your life. And just like that, for Jason, it works. He begins to control his powers like he should have done since the very beginning. And so right after you have the two characters being able to actually separate, and for Jason, this is great, but when he turns around to see Stevie, Stevie is there, but Stevie seems dead. And matter of fact, the body of Stevie is beginning to turn to some kind of goo and begins to fall into the sewers. And so we're kind of left to believe that something happened when they separated that affected the body of Stevie. And now Stevie is possibly dead and gone forever. Now for Jason, the only thing he can do is just go home. Except when he does get home, unfortunately, his father is upset with him. And the reason why, because Jason is gone for the entire night. And so for his father is all like, this house is not a motel at all. You should be coming home when you should be coming home. You have no right to be out all night. Now, it does lead into another moment where it does seem like his father is going to abuse him. But then at the very last second, the phone rings. And with the phone ringing, it kind of like stopped his father from abusing him. And for Jason, he knows who's calling. It's Mick. And so you have Jason being able to walk away. And really, the ending of this book kind of ends with Jason being able to actually communicate with his friend Mick, and they kind of have a good old phone conversation. Now, I kind of want to go ahead and stop the video here. And the reason why, because the second half of the first volume is technically the actual tie-ins for the event better known as Identity Crisis. But with that being said, please guys, leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.